Well, a very warm welcome to Jump To It here on irishracing.com. I'm Ed Quigley, and we're going to have a look at an action-packed weekend. It's fair to say coming up at Ascot, Haydock, Wincanton, and there's some really good action in Ireland as well, which should hopefully glean some festival clues. Of course, taking centre stage over in the UK will be the Ascot Chase, a Grade 1 sponsored by Betfair. They're really looking forward to that assignment, which has attracted a really strong field, I think it is fair to say. Without further ado, though, let's bring in the team of Stephen Harris and Vincent Finegan. Great to see you, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah,
Storm Dudley, we've got everything strapped down here. I'm hoping that the racing all goes ahead. Look at the weather forecast. It must be a bit of a concern, Ed, I think.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I take things with a pinch of salt sometimes, but I've seen weather forecasters over here say that it could be the worst storms for 30 years or so. Anyway, you know, that can be the Twitter micro bubble could sometimes get you all worried, but that is definitely something of concern. Vincent, you're back from sunny Spain and not long to Cheltenham Festival. You click it into top gear now.
Oh, we're just about getting there. Yeah, it's all shaping up nicely for Cheltenham. We're going to talk about that in another show on Monday. It'll be on this channel as well, and it's getting very exciting. We're into the last stages of preparation, and people are beginning to jostle their horses in different ways. We're starting to see who's going where, so it'll be exciting stuff over the next few weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. About 3.5 weeks to go, there or thereabouts, until the Cheltenham Festival. Anyway, where more immediate affairs are more pressing, let's look ahead to the weekend's races. Well, we'll kick off at Haydock. Saturday's card at Haydock, the 205. 3 miles, half a furlong for the William Hill Rendlesham Hurdle Grade 2 contest here. Intriguing little encounter, this one, Stephen. My old friend Thomas Darby is in this race and should take a lot of beating on ratings. Do you share that view, or are you looking elsewhere?
I prefer Molly Ollie's Wishes, to be honest, Ed. I know you love Thomas Darby, and he did you a turn when he swooped from nowhere at Newbury a month or two ago, but he's since gone back to his old ways, I thought, at Ascot last time. If you watch the last 100 yards of his race, he was absolutely legless. The old head was up again, and he is a bit of a monkey. He needs the cards to fall right. The pluses for him, obviously, he goes well on soft ground. He'll be ridden patiently in what's likely to be quite a strongly run race, I'd have thought. And as you say, he's top of the ratings. But I just think Ollie's Wishes from another inform yard. I think both Dan and Ollie have had 9 winners in the last 14 days. They're both chugging along nicely at a time when Paul Nicholls has been a bit quiet, and one or two of the other top yards. I preferred Ollie's Wishes. When she won at Ascot last time, she ended up having quite a hard race in testing ground, but she put the race to bed a long way out. And I think Harry will be a lot more patient on her on Saturday. I think she's around 3-1. I think that's slightly better value than Thomas Darby in a race that does have a very trappy look to it.
Yeah, good point you make there, Stephen. Also, just touching upon Ollie's Wishes, she's obviously getting the mare's allowance and all the best form pretty much on soft or heavy ground. So, I mean, if we're looking at the latest kind of going bulletin from Haydock, unsurprisingly, officially heavy, it will take some getting there.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be crawling home at Haydock. I mean, Haydock, Ed, you know, in the summer in August when they used to chuck all the water on, it was good ground and it was virtually soft. On the jumps course, it gets really bad there. And if it's windy as well, that it'll be last man walking up the straight. I mean, it is one of those days, I would say that ahead of all this weekend's racing, that to be very careful as a punter, because it could get extremely... There's a difference between winter soft ground and what we might get on Saturday in sort of 50-mile-an-hour winds on heavy ground and raining. It does have a certain randomised look to it. You know, I find myself putting my bookmaker hat on. The old spread betting days, you'd be buying SPs at the start of the Saturday racing. It has got that look to it.
Absolutely. You might be buying distances as well as they come home with different postcodes of this. Anything else on the rest of the car, Steve, would grab your eye? I mean, we got the Grand National Trial where I believe Bristol Demise is going to run off top weights. There's the Pertemps qualifier. There's the Albert Bartlett Trial with Hillcrest trying to make amends after tipping up at Cheltenham last time. Anything jumping off the page at you for either a wager for this weekend or with a view to a longer term kind of prospect?
Well, I do think Hillcrest is interesting. I was looking at the markets this morning. I think Hillcrest is around a 25-1 chance. I assume it'd be for the Albert Bartlett at the the festival. Well, if you're going to back an English horse, I think he's probably the one who's overpriced, and he loves really testing ground, and it's obviously going to be bottomless at Haydock. So I think he'll be a short price to make amends from that unfortunate early unseat. He's a relentless galloper. He's going to be a brilliant staying chaser, probably sooner rather than later, knowing Henry Daly. And he's a very interesting runner on Saturday. And as I say, probably worse bets, especially looking at the weather forecast for the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of rain in it. So we could end up, after all the talk, we've been talking about it for months, haven't we? It hasn't rained for ages. Could it be a sort of good ground Cheltenham? Well, it could end up being a testing ground Cheltenham quite easily looking at the next couple of weeks. So horses like Hillcrest, well worth bearing in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Henry Daly, representative, clearly a horse with a huge engine and a bright future. Right, we'll shuffle along now and look ahead to Ascot. I mentioned at the top of the show, the Betfair Ascot Chase, Grade 1 action on your cards, over 2 miles and 5 furlongs. The 8 declared going to post here. A scintillating contest, this one, Stephen. St. Calvados, generally your market leader here. We've got Mr. Fisher, Fanny Destrafel, Fakir D'Oudairies, Dashel Drasher, of course, absolutely loves this place. Lost in Translation, 2 for Gold, and Waiting Patiently. What a lineup.
Well, this is a brilliant race. I mean, this is what racing is actually all about. 8 runners, Ed, as well. I mean, something's gone wrong at the sort of big bookmakers HQ this weekend, hasn't it? They haven't been able to ring round some mythical rag and get it down to 7 or 15 at the moment. Let's hope all 8 turn up, because it's a brilliant race for punters. I think it's at least 4-1 the field, but I really do like Fanny and Destravel of Venetia Williams.
Yeah.
Ran last time. It's been running in handicaps basically. It's a brilliant jumper, revels in soft ground like all of Venetia's. 11 winners in the last 14 days, Venetia. 34% strike rate. This one, last season, started off at Newbury, having arrived from France, and looked like a sort of Grade 1 performer in a handicapper. The wheels fell off after that as Venetia's form went out the window, but he's come back better than ever this season. I really liked his win at Newbury. Again, under a motionless Charlie Deutsch, routed the field. People will be sort of snobby and say, well, it's only handicap form, but I don't think there's that much difference, certainly in the UK, between these top handicaps and the Grade 2, Grade 1 races, personally. And then last time, Fanny and Destrel got picked off at Ascot, ridden by Lucy Turner, who's a very good jockey that Venetia uses effectively to take the weight off some of these horses occasionally. But I don't think she got things right. She went for home too soon and got picked off by the patiently ridden Phoenix Way at Ascot. That was very good form. The key to this race on Saturday, Ed, I think Dashel Drush is going to try and lead. I suspect a couple of others might do so too. I don't think Dashel Drush will get left alone, and it could be set up for a sort of patient ride from Fanny and Destrel. I am conscious that the Irish horse, there's only one Irish runner in the field of Joseph O'Brien's, Fakir D'Oudairies. I am conscious that form might just be on a better level. He wasn't in the same parish as Allaho the other day, but you do suspect, as we say every week on this programme, Vincent always agrees, the Irish form is at least a stone better, and we might see another example of that on Saturday maybe.
Quite an interesting point you raise. On official ratings, Fakir D'Oudairies is at least £2 better than the field. He is the best horse in the lineup. We mentioned Waiting Patiently was running. Well, Sitting Patiently has been Vincent Finegan waiting to get involved on this chat. This is a good lineup, this Vincent. And regards to the Irish challenge here, Fakir D'Oudairies, we know in his own right, he's a pretty classy operator.
Absolutely. Like he's no match for Allaho the few times he's met him. Beaten 12 lengths in the Ryanair last year, beaten 12 lengths again in Thurles the last day. Made a bad mistake at the first that day, which probably didn't help. One thing to note about Fakir D'Oudairies is the ground. He can't get it heavy enough. So the more testing this is, the better it'll be for him. He looks a real contender here because, in fairness, it's a competitive looking race, but a lot of the English horses have been beating each other. There's not a whole lot between them. Dashel Drasher won it last year. He got beaten a short head by 2 for Gold the last day. He's now £6 better off. You'd like to think on a track that suits him and everything else, he's most likely going to be a contender. The other one that I find interesting all the time I see the horse run is this Waiting Patiently. We'll be talking later on about the Boyne Hurdle in Ireland where Tiger Roll is due to run, but Waiting Patiently hasn't won a race in 4 years and is still rated 160. Now, it was this race 4 years ago that he won. That's the last time he's won a race. It's amazing, isn't it? I think he's rated 160 and hasn't won for 4 years. And then you've got the likes of Michael O'Leary giving out about Tiger Road rating, having won 2 Grand Nationals. Like, come on, somewhere in all of this, I wouldn't like to be the people owning and training, waiting patiently, because my God, it's been a long haul waiting for another win. Having said that, he's not totally out of this on his best, but will he ever reproduce it? I don't know. For me, Fakir D'Oudairies is the most likely winner. I see Betfair say this morning that they've laid him during the week from 9-2 into 7-2. I could see a lot more money coming for him. He may end up a wrong price. He could end up a 9-4 chance here if people really do get stuck into him, but he could be a little bit ahead of these in real terms.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating clash, isn't it? The ground, you mentioned the ground there, Vincent, officially soft at the time of recording, with more rain and wind on the way. We'll come back to you, Stephen, for the rest of the Ascot card. I was hoping to see Walking on Air in the opener. It doesn't sound like he's going to run. We've got the Rendlesham Chase has got the 6 declared for it, including Does He Know, Coric, Rambler, Annual Invictus. Anything else anywhere taking your eye?
Well, just coming back to waiting patiently for a second, Ed, Vincent's absolutely right. Before, when Christian Williams got him, he was working absolutely fantastic. Nothing of Christian Williams could get anywhere near him. And Christian Williams has got some top-level handicappers now, 5-star getaway, etc. So they were really excited about the King George. I know people were on. I had a few quid on him, and he ran no kind of race at all. He is the sort of exchange horse on Saturday. He could be 50-1 quite easily. He'll have been written off and forgotten about. He's old, or Vincent said he hasn't won for 4 years. He's still a top-class horse. And this sort of race round here could pan out ideally for him. He's going to be dropped out last. If he settles into a jumping rhythm, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he ran an awful lot better. Christian would have been mortified about how he ran at Kempton over Christmas. He's an exceptionally good trainer, Christian, and I'm sure he'll have waiting patiently back somewhere near his best. So I would definitely have him winning. The rest of the card, I've got a couple of bets on it that I'll talk about later on. The staying handicap chase is a cracking race, and there's a couple of really good handicaps on the card as well. The horse you touched on, Ed, Walking on Air, who was so impressive the other day. I know that one very high-profile, huge player in Ireland has backed him for the Cheltenham Festival very heavily, and they would know that he was heading to I think it's is he in the Ballymore?
Well, Nicky Henderson said he's heading to the Ballymore, and whether he can get a run into him or not another run into him beforehand.
Yeah,
it sounds like
you'd think now he must be going straight to the Ballymore. Then I mean, he looks top class. I would have thought he's one of the brighter hopes for English trainers in the week. It's a shame he isn't running, but having said that, I was going to say something you touched on earlier. I suspect missing this weekend might not be a bad idea. Heavy ground. Force 10 gale, 3.5 weeks before Cheltenham. It's not exactly the ideal preparation. Nothing's going to be winning on the bridle, is it?
No, there is always the chance a few horses could leave their kind of festival behind if you take that kind of viewpoint. I just very quickly want to throw in the 3 o'clock. My friends, Team Tizard, Colin Tizard and Brendan Powell have been on absolute fire at the moment. Of course, we saw them pull the rabbit out the hat with Eldorado Allen last weekend. They've been firing in winners right, left and centre. Reserve Tank, an old friend of mine's in a handicap hurdle there at 3 o'clock. Has dropped to a career low mark. I think it's around the 16-1 kind of price or thereabouts. So definitely one to keep your eyes on. Right, we'll move swiftly onwards to the Kingwell Hurdle at Wincanton on Saturday. An intriguing little encounter again here. It's a small field, but it's not devoid of class, I think it's fair to say. Just the 4 due to go to post. We have Goshen for Gary Moore, the rejuvenated Goshen after his win last time out. Adagio, of course, he was last seen finishing runner-up in the Greatwood. Favois for Bridget Andrews, Dan Skelton, back over hurdles. And Landinabo Lad for Nico de Boinville and Tom Simmons, the outsider of the 4. Stephen, any strong views on this one?
I suspect Goshen's going to end up a very short price here. I see his odds against at the moment. Now, I'm not the horse's biggest fan, but he was extremely impressive the other day. And Ed, you know, at Wincanton, I mean, most of the year, it's a microclimate down there. It's usually good or good to firm. But when it gets heavy, it's soft at the minute. When it gets heavy around there, they are absolutely unconscious. And that'll suit Goshen. I think he'll make all the running. I think 11-10. You'd be very worried with Adagio. He's not had a run for 3 months. He's only had 1 run this season. He's supposed to be going for the champion hurdle. He's not going to be 100% gunned for this race, is he? No, I wouldn't have thought personally. And the other 2 have got 2 stone to find. So, I mean, if Goshen is in the same form as he was at Sandown, 11 to 10 is probably a massive price. He'll make all the running, they won't see him.
Yeah, that's a good point you raised. Also, bear in mind that Goshen doesn't have any entries at Cheltenham.
No.
It'll be tuned up for today. I think I read perhaps they're considering having a crack at Punchestown or some other targets later on in the spring. Yeah, anything else at Wincanton for you, Stephen, or a case of powder dry?
No, I think with the weather, Ed, I'm going to watch the first couple of races, see how bad it is. I think it's going to be so attritional at all the tracks this weekend that stakes should be kept pretty small, to be truthful.
Yeah, absolutely. Blowing a gale. One man who's, as I said, been sitting very patiently today. We apologise, Vincent. We're rattling on here, leaving you out of your own show. Take us away with the Irish action, because I do think, on a serious point here, we will have some. We've got some good races in themselves, but also it could be a couple of clues in regards to Cheltenham Festival.
Oh, without a doubt, we've got a decent weekends racing. We've got Gowran Park on Saturday, Red Mills Day. Two major races there. Well, they should be. One of them is the Red Mills Trial Hurdle, which we've 7 runners declared for. This is a very hot race now, in fairness, for this time of the year. You've got Quigley, which won the Triumph last year, hasn't won a race since. Wouldn't be the first Triumph Hurdle winner, never to win again. But he's got the horse that beat him the last day, Tihupu, is in this as well. Has beat him the last twice, actually. Quigley. You've got Darasso, which beat Saint Felician last day in Nice. That St. Felician's one of Gordon Elliott's that he has entered in the champion hurdle. So that was probably a decent run. I think Darasso was given weight away that day as well, gave £5. You've got Saldier, which beat Darasso in Tipperary last October and pulled up against Classical Dream and Flooring Porter in that attritional race at Christmas in Leopardstown. And then there's a very interesting horse in here, a 4-year-old of Gordon Elliott's called The Tide Turns. It was 4 to Vauban the last day at the Dublin Racing Festival. It's looking like going for the Fred Winter, but as you were mentioned to me earlier, which I wasn't aware of, it needs another run. So which is why it's running here. It's only got a rating of 135 by the UK handicapper for the Fred Winter, but needs to run here to qualify. You have to have had 3 runs. So that would be a very interesting runner. Probably not a contender to win the race, but certainly with Cheltenham in mind, definitely watch out and see how that 4-year-old runs. The other major race on the card at Gowran on Saturday is the Red Mills Chase. This is cut up badly, in fairness. There's only 5 runners left in it, but the one to focus on here is Mellon. Mellon was 4th in the Saddles Chase at Christmas, which was a very good run, with Gold Cup and those sort of things in mind. He won't be running in that, I'd imagine, but he's a 4-time Cheltenham Festival runner-up. He's been second in a Supreme Novice Hurdle. He was second in 2 champion hurdles and second in a Marsh Chase, beaten and nose by Sam Crow last time. So he deserves a change of look at some stage in his career at Cheltenham, and perhaps this will be the springboard for it. Then we move on to Sunday. Interesting on Sunday, Navan. There's a lot of potential class here. We haven't got declared runners at this stage. We're still dealing with the entries. But there's a maiden hurdle that kicks off the card. There's an interesting horse I noticed in there called Distant Chimes, which I don't know whether either of you guys would remember from the UK. It was trained by Sir Mark Prescott and won 4 races on the bounce. One of those Prescott ones, did nothing as a 2-year-old over shorter trips and stepped it up in trip. He won 4 in a row in the summer of 2019. He's now reappearing with Henry de Bromhead. Haven't seen him in 2 years. He could be anything. There's also another horse in that owned by Joe Donnelly, trained by Willie Mullins, called Bring On the Night. It has a Supreme Novice Hurdle entry and has never run anywhere. So if that turns up, it'll be interesting to see how that runs. And then we've also got a bumper on the card, which was won by Ginto last year, the good horse, the good staying hurdler of Gordon Elliott's. And Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott both have strong entries here with previous. I think they each have a pair of point-to-point winners. So that'll be something to look at. But the big races on the card, there's a Grade 3 Novice Chase, which has an interesting entry here. I don't know whether it's going to run. Is one Run Wild Fred. I keep on about this horse. I think he'll win the National Hunt Chase in Cheltenham. The last race on the first day, the amateur riders race, used to be called the 4-miler. Gordon Elliott has said several times recently, including the fact he was declared for a race a couple of weeks ago in Nice, and he keeps saying he's going directly to Cheltenham. He doesn't run, so I'm not quite sure why they've entered him here again. But if he does turn up, definitely have a look at him and see how he gets on. One interesting thing around that National Hunt Chase this morning is one of our top amateur riders, Barry O'Neill, has been booked to ride Rebecca Curtis's Pat's Fancy. Now, that horse, I haven't seen a horse jump that well in years against Brave Man's Game the last day. Like, everyone's watching Brave Man's Game. You look at Pat Fancy on its outside the whole way around. He pings every single fence. He is a real contender for that 4-miler.
Massive,
and now
massive price, isn't he, Vincent? I think he's still 16 to 1 at the time of recording. I think huge price back to fancy. In my view.
It's astonishing. For me, as I say, I've been saying for weeks and weeks, I think Runwell Fred is made for the 4-miler. So is Pat's Fancy. And the way he jumps, my goodness, he's a talent, that horse. Yeah. Obviously, he was getting a lot of weight off Braveman's game. Disregard that it's a different type of race, this.
Yeah.
And just for a horse who he's an out-and-out stayer. And I haven't seen a horse jump this well in a long, long time. So he's a danger to Runwell Fred at 16 to 1. If you're backing Runwell Fred like I am, you need to have a saver on Pat's Fancy, knowing that he's going and they've got a top amateur booked. As we talked previously on the shows about this, you need a top amateur for that race. Anyway, moving on, the big race on Sunday, for lots of reasons, is the Boyne Hurdle in Navan. And it's a 2-mile 5 hurdle. There's 18 entries at the minute. There's a few of them who are entered won't go. Darasso and Saudi are both running in Gowran Park on Saturday instead. But Tiger Roll is one in here. He won this race in 2019 and then went on to win the cross country in Cheltenham and the Aintree Grand National that year. He ran in this race again last year and finished tailed off last. I thought he was gone at that stage. I thought his career was over. Yeah. And yet he
pops we all did, didn't we?
Pops up in Cheltenham and hacks up against Easy Land in the cross country again. So it'll be interesting to see how he runs. There's some decent entries in it. Some very unusual horses entered here. One of them is Longhouse Poet, which won the Thyestes Chase, landed a gamble for Martin Braswell to win the Thyestes Chase a couple of weeks ago in Gowran Park. And he's back over hurdles here as well, or entered at least. And the one I like in it is Darby Star. This was a very good hurdler going back a couple of years ago. Finished third to Epatante in a champion hurdle, well backed. I think it started 17 to 2 or something, the third favourite for that particular race. And then went over fences and lost its way completely, was going nowhere, even as recently as Christmas time, had very poor form over fences, but has gone back over hurdles, was a wide margin winner over hurdles at Punchestown on New Year's Eve, and then had a very good run in the UK when it split. What were the horses? Goshen was third, and Brewing Up a Storm. Yeah. That's the horse that beat him. Yeah, like that. That's decent. A decent level of form, and you'd like to think this is sort of maybe one or two grades below the top, and Darby Star should be winning this. You'd like to think so. It's an interesting day.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of intermediate trip seems to suit that individual there. Right, I think that's a very comprehensive roundup there, Vincent. Now we're going to nail all the colours to the mast, shall we say. It's time for our tips of the week. Well, looking ahead to weekend's action, lots to choose from, Stephen. We'll come to you first. We won't reflect on last week. Let's look on a positive note this week. What we're getting stuck into, where's the best bets?
I think 3 o'clock at Ascot, Ed, Good Risk at All, who's a 7 to 2 chance, which you'd think perhaps on a Saturday you shouldn't really be looking at favourites in handicaps, but I don't think this is a particularly good race. I think it might be down to 3 to 1 now. Paul Nicholls has got the second in. For me, Paul Nicholls is still struggling. He did have a couple of winners at the weekend, but he's had another week where he's been virtually missing, hardly had a runner. They're still not right, so I'd be swerving his horses. Sam Thomas is going particularly well. He's got some lovely young horses. This one was a really impressive soft ground bumper winner last season. Yeah. Got rolled over at 3 to 1 on first time out over hurdles, then bumped into John Bon. No, not disgraced at all. That form's been well franked by the winner since. And then last time out at Warwick, the whole world and his wife were on. He was ridden with supreme confidence. He should have won by 2 or 3 lengths. He made a really bad mistake at the last and then got out battled a little bit by Barrichello, who's one of McCain's thriving horses. They're just winning with the stable cat in a minute. So Good Risk at All is miles ahead of this mark. He goes up 3 furlongs in trip. There's 2 or 3 front runners in the race to go right gallop because he does need to settle. He can be quite a free going sort, but 7 to 2. I suspect he's going to be one of these Saturday favourites. He'll end up 7 to 4. I think if you can get 7 to 2, 3 to 1 now, I think it's a very fair price. And I think he'll win with any luck in running. And staying at Ascot, the 225, a competitive staying handicap chase, but Fortescue ran at Kempton, 1 start back, very similar conditions, right-handed, soft ground. He finished second behind 5-star Getaway. He should have won. Richard Patrick, I was on, obviously, pocket talk. There we go. Richard Patrick had the race, absolutely won a mile out and sat still. He could have gone 8 or 10 lengths clear and had it won, but he sat still a length in front and got outstayed by horse Christian Williams, 5-star Getaway. The third there, Phlegmatics, come out and absolutely bolted up last week to frank the form. Since then, Fortescue's run an absolute screamer in a very hot Haydock handicap when he wasn't ridden anywhere near the pace and stayed on really well. Hugh Nugent's up, takes off £5. I think he's a double figure price. I think he'll go really well as well with conditions to suit.
Yeah, absolutely. Ran really well behind Broad Guy. Haydock last time
Yeah,
out, finishing third. Yeah, obviously that form is pretty tasty. Vincent, we come to yourself. You mentioned, I think, this horse slightly earlier, and he's going to be your best bet this weekend.
Yeah, I was going to go with Darver Star. I'm hoping he'll be a price. Originally, we had, as I say, Darasso and Saldier in this race in Navan, the Boyne Hurdle, but they both run Saturday instead. So they were two that were going to make him a bit of a price. He's possibly going to be a little bit short now, depending on how many run, but we've still got some interesting horses in it that might take some of the market. Tiger Roll probably won't. I'm sure he'll be double figure odds, only having a prep run for Cheltenham. But you've got horses like Grand Roy and Commander of Fleet. They were both behind Classical Dream and Flooring Porter in that Leopardstown race. You've got Gentleman's Game, Early Doors, Ronald Pump, who's a decent horse, and has chased home Honeysuckle a couple of times in Fairy House. Then you've got this Longhouse Poet. So if a lot of them turn up and we get a double figure field, you could be looking at odds against Darver Star, and I think at odds against it's well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep your eyes on Darver Star, their horse, clearly with a lot of class. I'm going to throw in a couple here. I'm going up to Haydock to begin with. The mud's going to be flying. A horse up there called Adramal, trained by Tom Lacey. Very straightforward logic. He loves Haydock. He's unbeaten at the track, and he absolutely loves mud. So that's pretty much the reason I'm tipping him there. A horse who's a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde character, but in those conditions, totally comes alive. And then, yeah, as you know, gents, I'm a very loyal person. I'm with Goshen again here now. I just cannot get this horse right. But right-handed, soft ground. He won this race by 22 lengths last year. I think this is an easier race on paper than last year. He's got to have every chance. I make him an odds-on shot in my book, personally. Anyway, we shall see. So Goshen for me in the Kingwell Hurdle on Saturday afternoon. My thanks to you, gents. Very quickly before we go, Stephen, you up to much this weekend?
Well, I'd probably be stapling down the garden furniture, Ed. I mean, I do worry that this might all be off. It might all be academic, because I can't see that the BHA in the sort of present climate are going to want horse boxes driving up and down the country when there's 80-mile-an-hour winds and all the rest of it. So let's just hope it's not as bad as it says it's going to be. But I think there's going to be some real grueling and sapping races.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it should be testing conditions. Hopefully everything's safe and while it does go ahead. Vincent, you mentioned me off air about storms. You said there's a bit of a storm's come through your living room and kitchen recently. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, the storm is about to brew next Tuesday. My wife is coming back from Spain, and I've been at home for 2 weeks on my own, so the place is in a bit of a mess. So that's my weekend is going to be rubber gloves and mops, I'd say, trying to get everything in shape before she comes back to stop the storm hitting.
Absolutely. That sounds like a very good plan. Well, anyway, thank you very much for joining me, Stephen and Vincent. Thank you very much at home for tuning in. Of course, don't forget to keep checking out irishracing.com for all the latest news, views, and features, and follow all of Stephen Harris's tips on Betting Expert as well. Thank you very much once again for joining us. We're doing it all again next week. Bye for now.